The first lawsuit against me was filed before I even knew my name was on the paperwork. Not because I had done anything wrong, not because I had signed a contract, but because, according to court records in Fulton County, Georgia, I had been the owner of a trucking company for almost 4 years. The problem? I had never heard of the company. My name is Ava Reynolds. I'm 35 years old, and I work as a forensic accountant in Atlanta. My job is simple. I follow money when everyone else has stopped looking. Fraud leaves patterns. Debt leaves footprints. People lie. Numbers rarely do. On a quiet Wednesday morning, my receptionist walked into my office, carrying a thick envelope with a worried look on her face. "You've been served." I laughed. There must be some mistake. She didn't laugh back. The lawsuit accused me of unpaid taxes, illegal payroll practices, and nearly $3 million in commercial debt. The company listed on every page was called Southern Ridge Logistics. Owner, Ava Elizabeth Reynolds, my full legal name. Even my birthday matched. I stared at the papers, waiting for the obvious typo. It never came. I immediately searched the Georgia Secretary of State business records. The company existed. It had existed for almost 4 years. The registered owner, me, the registered signature, looked exactly like mine. I checked the filing date. 4 years earlier, that week, I had been in Seattle attending a national accounting conference. I still had hotel receipts, flight records, photos. There was no possible way I had signed anything in Georgia. Someone had stolen more than my identity. They had built an entire business using it. By lunchtime, I was sitting inside the office of Special Agent Marcus Hill from the State Financial Crimes Division. He flipped through the paperwork without saying a word. Finally, he looked at me. "This is one of the cleanest identity theft operations I've ever seen. Can you fix it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Miss Reynolds, is there anyone close to you who had access to your personal documents about 4 or 5 years ago?" I answered immediately, "No." Then I stopped. 5 years ago, I had moved apartments. For 2 months, every important document I owned had been stored inside my older sister Lauren's garage while my new condo was being renovated. Birth certificate, passport, tax returns, everything. Agent Hill noticed my expression change. Someone just came to mind. I slowly nodded. But it can't be her. Lauren was successful, married, owned 2 restaurants, volunteered at charities. She was the person everyone in our family trusted with everything. Agent Hill closed the file. In my experience, the people who commit this kind of fraud are usually the last people anyone suspects. That evening, I drove to Lauren's house, not because I believed she was guilty, because I wanted to eliminate the possibility. She opened the front door, smiling. "Ava!" What a surprise! Then she noticed the court documents in my hand. Her smile disappeared, only for half a second, but I saw it. That tiny moment lasted less than a heartbeat. Most people would have missed it. "I made my living noticing tiny things," I smiled back. "I just need to ask you one question." She stepped aside. "Of course." I looked directly into her eyes. "Have you ever heard of Southern Ridge Logistics?" For the first time in 23 years. My sister didn't answer immediately. Lauren didn't answer. She looked past me into the empty street before stepping outside and quietly closing the front door behind her. It was the first thing that made my stomach tighten. If she had nothing to hide, why didn't she want this conversation inside her own house? "What is Southern Ridge Logistics?" I asked again. She folded her arms. "Where did you hear that name?" "I was served with a lawsuit this morning." Her face lost every trace of color. "A lawsuit?" "Yes. They say I own the company." For a moment, she looked genuinely confused. Then, almost relieved. That reaction didn't make sense. She slowly shook her head. Ava. I don't know what this is, but I swear I never created any company. I wanted to believe her. She was my sister. We had shared birthdays, vacations, Christmas mornings. She had helped me through college. She had cried at my graduation. People don't suddenly become strangers overnight, or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. Before leaving, I asked one final question. 4 years ago, when my documents were stored in your garage, did anyone else have access? She hesitated. My husband. Ethan, my brother-in-law. He owned a commercial trucking repair business just outside Atlanta. Suddenly something clicked. Trucking, logistics, commercial debt. The industries matched perfectly. I thanked Lauren and drove away, instead of going home. I drove straight to Special Agent Hill's office. When I mentioned Ethan's name, he immediately turned toward his computer. Without saying anything, he searched several state databases. 30 seconds later, he frowned. What? I asked. Hill slowly turned the monitor toward me. 3 different trucking companies had closed during the last 6 years. Every one of them had received repair contracts from Ava Reynolds Truck Service. Same address, same phone number, same owner, my brother-in-law. Hill leaned back in his chair. I don't think your identity was stolen by accident. I think someone needed a clean name. My name? He nodded. You have excellent credit. No lawsuits. No criminal record. No tax problems. You're exactly the kind of identity a fraud operation would choose. I felt sick, not because of the money, because someone close enough to know every detail about my life had quietly built another life using my name. Hill suddenly looked toward the office window. How many people know you've started asking questions? My receptionist. You. My sister. He stood up immediately. Go home. Pack a bag. What? If this operation is still active, they already know you're looking. I laughed nervously. You think I'm in danger over paperwork? Hill didn't smile. I've investigated financial crime for 18 years. It always starts as paperwork. It doesn't always end there. I drove home before sunset. Everything looked normal. My mailbox, my front porch, my flowers. Until I noticed my front door wasn't fully closed. I knew I had locked it that morning, very carefully. I stepped inside. Nothing had been stolen. The television was still there, the laptop, the jewelry, everything. But every single file cabinet in my home office had been opened. Thousands of pages lay scattered across the floor. Someone wasn't searching for valuables. They were searching for documents, exactly like the people who searched my parents' house in old crime movies. Only this wasn't a movie. It was my house, and before I could even call Agent Hill, my phone vibrated. Unknown number, one text message. Stop digging before your sister becomes the next victim. I didn't reply to the text. I took a screenshot. Forwarded it to Agent Hill. Then I locked every door in my house before walking back into my office. The files were everywhere. Tax records, client contracts, old notebooks. Nothing appeared to be missing. Whoever had searched my office wasn't stealing information. They were looking for one specific document. The question was, which one? Less than 20 minutes later, Agent Hill arrived with 2 investigators. They photographed every room, dusted for fingerprints, collected the anonymous text message. Hill crouched beside one of my overturned filing cabinets. They knew exactly where to look. What do you mean? He pointed toward the bottom drawer. The top drawers are a mess. The bottom drawer was emptied carefully. They were looking for something they believed you already had. I frowned, but I don't have anything. Hill looked at me. Maybe you do, and you just don't know it yet. That sentence stayed with me. The next morning, I canceled every client meeting and started going through my own records one box at a time. Old tax returns, conference badges, college notebooks. Then, Near the bottom of a storage box I hadn't opened in years. I found a manila envelope. Across the front, in my late father's handwriting, were 4 words. For Ava, open later. I had completely forgotten it existed. Dad had given it to me the week before he passed away. I'd been too overwhelmed to ever open it. My hand shook as I unfolded the papers inside. The first page wasn't a letter. It was a photocopy of my birth certificate. The second, a notarized statement, signed by my father, dated 6 years earlier. If anything ever happens to me, Ava needs to know that I never trusted Ethan with her personal documents. I stopped breathing. There was more. I discovered someone copying Ava's passport and tax records while they were stored in Lauren's garage. When I confronted Ethan, he claimed it was an insurance requirement for one of his business partners. I didn't believe him. I told Lauren she chose to believe her husband. The final sentence hit harder than anything else. If you're reading this, I was probably right. I closed my eyes. Dad had known, not everything, but enough to leave me a warning. Just then my phone rang. Lauren, I answered immediately. Ava. She was crying. Ethan's gone. What do you mean? He emptied our joint bank accounts. He left this morning. He isn't answering his phone. And she struggled to breathe. The police are here. My heart sank. Lauren, what happened? Her voice broke. They searched our house. They found boxes. Boxes filled with fake IDs, company seals, and documents with your name on them. I looked at the letter still lying on my desk. Everything suddenly made sense. Not because the mystery was over, because it had finally become clear who had been pulling the strings. But one question still remained. If Ethan had spent 4 years building a company under my identity, why had he suddenly disappeared the very same day I found out? Ethan disappeared without taking his clothes, without taking family photographs, without taking the expensive watches he collected. He only took one thing, his laptop. That detail bothered Agent Hill more than anything else. People running from debt grab cash, he said. People running from evidence grab computers. For 3 days, nobody knew where Ethan had gone. Federal investigators froze every company connected to Southern Ridge Logistics. Bank accounts were locked. Warehouses were searched. Dozens of fake contracts were uncovered. The fraud operation was far larger than anyone imagined. More than 20 shell companies, millions of dollars in unpaid taxes, hundreds of forged documents. Every trail eventually pointed back to Ethan. Then, a truck driver in Tennessee called the police after recognizing Ethan from a news report. He had checked into a roadside motel under another name. Federal agents arrested him before sunrise. When investigators searched his laptop, everything finally fell into place. For 4 years, Ethan had used stolen identities to create fake transportation companies. Those companies borrowed millions of dollars, purchased equipment, collected loans, declared bankruptcy, then disappeared. Each time, a new stolen identity became the next company owner. My identity was simply the latest one. The anonymous text messages, the break-in, the fake paperwork. None of it had been random. Ethan believed I had discovered the original accounting files proving he had started the scheme years earlier. He searched my house because he thought my father had given me the evidence before he died. Ironically, the evidence had been sitting inside Ethan's own laptop the entire time. Lauren visited me 2 weeks later. She looked exhausted, older, like someone who had aged 10 years in a month. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have listened to Dad." I hugged her, not because everything was forgiven, because she had finally chosen the truth. The criminal case lasted almost a year. In the end, Ethan pleaded guilty to identity theft, bank fraud, wire fraud, tax fraud, and forgery. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison. Every company created under my name was legally erased. Every debt was removed. Every lawsuit against me was dismissed. The state officially declared that I had been a victim from the very beginning. The day the final court order arrived, Agent Hill handed me a small cardboard box. Inside were the original documents investigators had recovered: my passport copies, fake signatures, forged business filings. I looked at the papers for a long moment, then quietly closed the box. "I don't want them." Hill smiled. "Most people keep evidence." I shook my head. "I've spent enough years letting those papers define my life." A month later, I stood outside my office watching new employees carry in fresh furniture. My business had survived. So had my reputation. Clients came back. Friends stayed. Life moved forward. Sometimes people ask me what hurt the most. It wasn't the stolen identity. It wasn't the lawsuits. It wasn't even the millions of dollars attached to my name. It was discovering that the person sitting across from me at every Thanksgiving dinner already knew exactly how to become me. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's that trust should never replace verification, especially when money is involved. Family can be your greatest source of strength, but it should never be the reason you stop asking questions. Thank you for listening to my story. Take care of yourself. Protect your identity. Protect the people who truly deserve your trust. And I'll see you in the next story.